Okay, here we have our LCD display. Now this display is used to navigate through the menus. It'll display data and affect changes. I can turn this knob here, which is my value knob right here. So I can turn this knob, and as you can see here, I'm changing the preset. My first preset is the live light. Second one is reasons. We have Cubase, Sonar, and several other applications you can see right here. Up to 30 presets. Now I can press this button in, and that will give me this preset here called Live Light. But if I want to load up reasons, I'll go to here and I'll press enter to load, and now I have reasons. And this is our LCD display. Now this here, my value knob here, is used to turn certain data. Like for example here, I can turn the dial here. It says note. And I'm changing I'm going from note to program change and back and forth. I can press enter, and now here I am in note. I can use my value knob to increase the data incrementally or decrementally, up or down. So I can either go up in data or decrease the data, either way. It'll help me to get around to changing my settings, and to also help me edit my program. In this preset, we're using reasons. I'll press enter, let's say. That's it. That's the note. Press enter again, I'm right there. I go back to press preset, and I've changed the preset here for reasons. So this knob is used to change presets and to go up and down in whatever parameter I choose. Next, we have our left and right cursor buttons. Now these two buttons here allow us to maneuver through different menus on our MPD32. For example, I'll press enter here, and I have this menu, see right here, and I could move the cursor to the left. And we have the CC control. You can change that. I move to the right. You can change the note, the MTY, or the CPR. So we can maneuver through the menus using our left and right cursor buttons. Next, I have my preset button. I can press preset, and I can access any preset that's installed on the MPD32. Turn my data wheel, as you can see here, showed you before. Click my preset. Once I select it, I push in the data wheel right here, and it's selected. Go to preset again. I can select another preset, load. I have here my edit button. Now this button calls up edit mode. In any preset I'm in, I'll press edit, and here we have note. I can edit note or program change. Enter, and I now can edit my parameters. Now here we have our global button. I can press this, and I can change all the global commands, all the MIDI commands, the volume controls, and the commands for my knobs and my faders. I can change the settings for each one of the buttons and knobs and faders and the pads on my MPD32. So this is our global MIDI reset command, or our global system preferences command setup. Now this button right here is my program change. Now pressing this button, I enter program change mode. And in this mode, I can send a program change or program with bank change messages to a hardware or software. I can tell a particular software, like reasons, to play this particular program, which might be a keyboard. Or I might tell my MPC to play this bank program, which could be a set of drums. Now here we have our preview button. And this preview button allows you to see what value will be sent from a particular controller, whether it's a fader or a pad or a control knob, and to see that value. Now this gives you the precise control over the parameter. It sort of helps you from making these errors. Like for example, you might turn a knob and you're not too sure where that knob's at. By pressing preview, you'll know what the value of that knob is, and then you can turn the knob to the value you want it to be at. So holding down the preview button, this sort of allows you to sort of view the original value of, let's say, the fader. I know the original value. Then I can adjust the physical position of the fader as necessary before it transmits the value. So I'm going to put that fader right to where it's at. I may have moved it in another setting, but now I'm in this new setting and I want to make sure, well, I'll hold the preview button down. I'll move the fader to the value it's supposed to be at. Then from there, I can let it play, and then okay, I can adjust it after that point. Lift my hand off, then I have the ability to move the fader and adjust it. This way I won't make any mistakes with the previous setting on that particular fader or knob. Now these 5 buttons right here are my transport buttons. I can move back in my sequence, I can move forward, I can press stop the sequence, I can play it, or I can start to record my data. And this is my transport control section. Now here we have our control knobs. These are our knobs right here. We got 8 knobs. Now each of these knobs are 360 degrees. That means it's continuous, not just from one point to another. It's continuous control changes being sent. It's constantly being sent to either our Workstation, which is our maybe Pro Tools or Reasons or Cubase, or to a MIDI instrument. Let's say, a rack mount, Yamaha, Motif, XS or ES, or any rack mount. So we can send data, and we use these knobs once they're assigned to a specific data, and we can change the parameters of that data. I have my 8 faders right here. They're pretty stiff, really cool faders. And these faders are 8 assignable faders, and each fader can be used to send continuous control data, just like the knobs, to our Workstation, which could be Reasons or Cubase or whatever preset we have set for, or to a MIDI instrument, even to an MPC. You just got to make sure what parameters that this particular fader will control. Now here we have 2 banks. We have our control bank and our pad bank. Now my control bank, as you can see, has A, B, and C, right? We can control 3 different banks. Now how does control banks work? Is that it features 3 independent banks for continuous control that affects, let's say, my faders. I can have faders 1 through 8. This could be faders 9 through 16. So I can control up to 72 independent parameters with the knobs, faders, and the buttons, because I have 8 faders, 8 knobs, and 8 buttons, which are the buttons below my fader. Pads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4x4, 16 pads. These pads are typical MPC pads. Pressure sensitive, and you can change the sensitivity of each one of these pads, of course, as well. And we use these to trigger, let's say, maybe a drum machine. We want to play a chord, hit 3 of them down. You can control or hit, let's say, a keyboard or something. Or as I said, percussion or effects, whatever you have these pads assigned to. Once we've got our pads assigned, of course, we have banks. So we can have 16 and then 16 more, making 32, and 16 more, and 16 more, or 16 more. We got a total of 64. That means 64, here would be 48, 32, 16. See that? We can have up to 64 different sounds we can control or hit because we have banks for our pads. And this is our pad bank section. Sometimes you're working with your MPD32 and you hear the pad's not loud enough. Well, we'll press this button right here and it'll allow us to have full level. That means no matter how soft or how hard we hit the pad, it will still send out the full level, which is 127. Volume control change via MIDI. Now next to my full level, we have the 16 levels. Now the 16 levels button is used to activate the pads, the 16 pads that we have set up for that particular bank. And we can change the velocity with 16 levels. And you can press the 16 level button and the last pad that was hit gets mapped to all 16 pads. So the pads will now output the same note number and pressure control as the initial pad, but the velocity is fixed to the value shown. So for example, in the chart in the book, so if I hit a pad somewhere, and I hit that pad, the last pad hit, it will be the one it starts from. It's okay, from this pad here, the next pad will be a little bit louder, next pad a little bit louder. So I normally start with the bottom pad, the first pad, and that way it makes them go up louder incrementally. And I have the ability to have this 16 levels of any particular sound that I actually select that pad to trigger. Now next thing we have, this is note repeat. So once note repeat is held down, while striking the pad, it'll cause that pad to repeat and re-trigger over and over again. That's our note repeat function. And this latches, that latch. But if I just hold it down like that, I have to hold the pad down at the same time. But if I latch it, I can just hold the pad down and it'll hold on because this is going to latch automatically. It's just, okay, I'm holding it, I'll hold. So when the light's on, we're in latch mode for the note repeat function. I like to always tap out my tempo. So we can tap our tempo. See it change right there? Or I can go real fast. See it blink faster? That's the tap tempo. And we can use this to get the right tempo for our song. And here we have our time division button. This is our time division button. And I can press that button and it allows me to set the time division up, whether it's quarter notes or quarter note triplets or eighth notes or eighth note triplets or 16th notes. And it sets my time division up. So if I press my note repeat, my notes will repeat according to my time division setup. Now, of course, our time division is right here, and we get a better view here now. You can see all our different divisions. It's up to 32nd note triplets, 32nd notes, our 16th note triplets, 16th notes, of course, 8th note triplets, 8th notes, quarter note triplets, and quarter notes. And this is all for our time division function here. And once that's off, as you can see, the light goes off. Turn it back on, it actually remembers what was left. So there's no actual default. That means once you set it to one setting, turn it back on, it'll remember that same setting. Okay, now I want to explain a little more about the note repeat and the time division function here on our MPD32. You'll see I have this note repeat button, of course, and I've got this drum here going on. As you can see, it's doing a pattern there. I can go here and it's changing the division of the notes. And this is all based on my tempo. So I do a different tempo now. So you see what happens here? And that's how note repeat works. And you can see here, this is, of course, the time division. So even if I'm playing something, it'll correct it according to time division set. Here, I can turn it off, press that button, and it's off. Turn this off, and the note repeat will no longer latch to the particular pad. I hit the pad, it won't happen. But if I hold this down, see what happens? Nothing. So you have to latch it to get it to work. Okay, I turn around now. Here we'll see my setup here. I'm using a USB cable, and this USB cable is supplying power to my MPD32. Now, if you have your own power unit, of course, you plug it right in here. This is going to be a 6-volt power unit. Plug it right in here, of course, with our plus in the middle and our negative current on the outside. Next, we have our MIDI input. We have MIDI out, MIDI in, so I can put a MIDI cable here or put one here and pop it right in there and get your MIDI cable lined up. Let's get this in properly here. There you go. I get a MIDI cable right in there. See that? So we got our MIDI inputs here and our MIDI outs right there. This is for a foot switch. So in case you're playing a piano, you can use an expression pedal or our 1 and 2 foot switches, which you can use for some parameters to control with our MPD32. And this is the back of the MPD32. To give you a better view here, and this is in the manual itself, we have a computer right here, and you have a USB cable going to your computer. And here we have an MPC 2500. We'd have a MIDI cable going into here, so out directly into here. And we can have a MIDI in going into here. So this could be our external MIDI device. This could be a keyboard, and this would go to the MIDI in. And the MIDI out information go right here. So when we're playing this keyboard, I'll play the keyboard, and then I can trigger sounds here. Here's my USB cable for this. So the overall unit here is my software controller for this. And I can control the data and record the data right here. Control from here, playing the keyboards, have the faders and the knobs right here for parameters within the software. And of course, if I want to, I can also send data here as well. Now here you'll see the foot switches, expression pedal, and of course the power adapter we were talking about earlier. Now I want to explain a little more about the note repeat and the time division function here on our MPD32. You'll see I have this note repeat button, of course, and I've got this drum here going on. As you can see, it's doing a pattern there. I can go here and it's changing the division of the notes. And this is all based on my tempo. So I do a different tempo now. So you see what happens here? And that's how note repeat works. And you can see here, this is of course the time division. So even if I'm playing something, it'll correct it according to time division set. Here, I can turn it off, press that button, and it's off. Turn this off, and the note repeat will no longer latch to the particular pad. I hit the pad, it won't happen. But if I hold this down, see what happens? Nothing. So you have to latch it to get it to work. Now here, I'll go back to hitting a note here. I'm hitting any pad here. And you'll notice here, we have data appear here. Now when I hit a pad on the MPD32, it will output MIDI note messages to trigger sounds. Let's say in my Reason software or Cubase or Go Live. Now each pad will sound this note information. For example, this first MIDI channel here is A, it's 1A. See that? And below that, this is pad bank A. Now if I change my pad bank, you'll see a change, see? And so now I'm back to A. This is the note. That's note 47. This corresponds to a MIDI note number. And here is the velocity. That's how hard we hit the pad. Hit the pad, that velocity changes. If I press full level, I get a full level output. If it's not, I won't get this full level, which is 127 for the velocity change. So when I hit the pad, this note data gets down to a port, and it'll trigger, let's say, another drum sound somewhere. I hit a pad, that triggers the drum sound. I hit this pad, that pad, or any other pad, and you see the pads in the bank right there. I know I'm triggering that sound. I know the data that's going to trigger that sound. I know how much the velocity is. I know the note that I'm going to hit. I know the MIDI channel. Now here, of course, this is velocity. This is the data. For example, if I hold something down, it's called aftertouch. So I'm holding the pad down now. See that? So it's telling me this is the aftertouch. After I've hit the pad, I'm still holding the pad down. If I let down lightly a little bit, not so hard, you see it change. It changes there from there's 97, it's going down. So I get lighter and lighter, and I get up, it goes back to 0. So as I'm holding the pad down to full velocity, once I strike it, this is the aftertouch. This is the pressure on the pad after I've struck the pad. So enabled aftertouch is a MIDI data sent when pressure is applied to the pads. Now, that's hitting a pad. This is the information we see. Now I'm going to move a fader. Here's fader number 1. I move that fader, and you can see here, we have more data here. Right? Here's a pad, here's a fader. So it's different data. Here, but the same thing. We have MIDI channel, that's 1A right there. We have our control channel. That, what does fader correspond to? That control element. That's my control channel number. It's control change number right there. See this? This is the control change number. See this here? That's my control change indicator. See this? control change number. Got that. Now, my control change value is right here. This is the data that's being sent. I move my fader up and down, and that's what's happening. This 0 is the top where my fader's at. And that data, which is here, is being sent over our MIDI channel 1A. And that's bank A. Now, of course, in control channels, we have A, B, and C. But I have to be in that bank to do that. See, I can press the pass, but it still maintains this we're in A. And so you can see there, it's still an A. That's important to understand. This works for knobs as well. And I'm going to turn the first knob. And now, some of the same similar thing appears, but we have here, the first knob is 002. That's the control change number. Okay? Still, we're in 1A, we're in bank A, and it's the data being sent. Now, with the knob you see here, it's the same thing. You know, it's continuous, so let me go to the maximum setting for that particular parameter. In this case, the maximum setting is 127. I can bring it back down, and there's 0. Now, these control knobs, the faders and the knobs, also can transmit aftertouch. So, just like the pads, the faders and knobs can also transmit aftertouch as well. So, I moved the fader. Now, I'm going to hit the play button in my transport section. Now, once I hit the play button, we see MIDI machine control, which is MMC. And this is commonly used to transmit transport control messages to hardware or to my software, like my Reason software, or to maybe an MPC hooked up to it, or some other sequencer. I can control it by pressing play, then pressing stop to stop that play. As I press stop, you see it says MMC stop. I can press the forward button, and it says MMC forward. Back button, back. I press the record button, it says MMC record. So these are the ways we can actually record a DAW, digital audio workstation, or an external sequencing device as well. About this preview button, I can press my preview button down, and when I do, we get to see two different settings. I'm going to move my fader first of all, and this is my fader, my first fader here, and I'm at 72. I'll hold the preview button down, and now we see that the last setting for it was 72, and this is the current setting. See that? It's the new value. So when the preview button is held down and the fader knob is moved, the LCD displays the screen that you see right here. And so the display shows the assigned event, last one. So this is the last one, and this is the new one, the current event. So at that point, the fader and knob will begin to transmit the value selected. So this all happens while the preview button is held. If I hold the preview button down, the fader and knob will not transmit any information. That means this fader of the knob won't do anything until I lift it up. So I do have to say, okay, I want to make sure this fader is right where it's supposed to be. That's the last setting it was at before I change it. This fader may control a volume or something. It was down further because I had it set for a different parameter before. Now I'm back in this volume parameter. Okay, I got it here. Then I release my preview button. I know my fader's at. If I move my fader now I'm affecting change. That's important. So you don't make these mistakes sometime when you're actually using your fader and knobs and you switch parameters and all of a sudden you don't know where it was last set up at. And this way you can actually check it, preview it, and then do it. Okay, I've got a preset here. I can press preset and I can change it. There's light. Live. I'll go back to here. My presets. I want to load this one. Load this. I've loaded it. Go back to here. Load that. I've loaded that. Let's say I want to edit the preset. I edit it. Okay, I want the note. I press enter here. I change this note here to 51. Like that note. I press enter. That note's 51. I go back. I can see it says 51 now. So perfect. Enter. It's good. Suppose I want to save it. So what I'll do is I go back to preset and I'll press the right arrow button. It says save to 2. I can save my changes to this Reasons preset 2 here by pressing enter. Or let's say I want to go to 3. It says copy. So if I go someplace else, if I go anywhere outside where it's at, it says copy. so I can copy it and save it to someplace different. See that? In this case, I want to save it to 2. But if you want to save a preset on a location, you can do that. The same location, it'll say save. A different location, it'll say copy. Because it says, no, it's not here. It's a different location. Here, I press that, it's right there. Now if I press preset here and I go here, you'll see there's a lot of presets here. And we have some generic presets we can make up our own presets at right here, starting from 17 to 30. We got a preset. We saved a brand new preset right here, okay? What I might want to do is rename it. So to do that, we'll press the right arrow. Now the first one it says save to. The second time I press it, it says name preset. To name one, we'll just change the value. So you turn the value knob and you can select the letters, whether uppercase or lowercase, and you can put them right there. And numbers as well. So it's important to understand how not just to save it or copy a preset, but also how to name that preset. Okay, so here I'm in Reasons preset on my MPD32, and I might want to edit some parameters. That's how it works. I'll press edit here, and I can set the parameters I want to edit. So by pressing edit, in this mode I can edit the settings of the currently selected preset. And the settings varying depend on the controller that I plan to edit. Now, you'll see, of course, I'll press enter. Let's go to note. Go to note here. After touch control, let me hit a pad. I think we can do after touch control. It's pretty good. So let's go back to preset. I hit my pad. And I press edit. I can edit the incremental up or decrease. I can do control change. I go use my control change. Now here in control set change, as you can see here it says setting 2. I have my fields here. This is field 1, here's 2, 3, and 4. And this is in settings 2. I can change these parameters. Now by hitting that pad, or the pad I've selected to hit, these parameters can be changed. Now this works for everything. I can, let's say I've got a fader. Let's get out of this here and we'll go back to preset. And I move this fader, which I just moved right now. I can edit the parameters in this. So I can edit now. And I can edit the parameters for the fader. You see it says F1 here, that means the fader, F1. I move fader 2, that's F2. Fader 3, F3, and so on. Now if I hit that control bank number, it changes. So they turn from 1 through 8 to 9 through 16. I hit the control bank C, and we've got 17 through 24. And I can control any changes that I assign to these faders for the banks. So I can go to bank A, and this first fader is 1. I can press the value knob down, and now I can edit the parameters for that fader. And these parameters here, I can say, sure, that's good. That's the control change parameters. I can do the aftertouch. And these are the aftertouch parameters. How much aftertouch, how little aftertouch I can do. This works for everything. I can turn a knob. Once I put this in, I turn a knob. And now I'm in knob 1. That's K1, K2, 3, 4. Here's 5, here's 6, here's 7, here's 8. Now, of course, there are parameters also with each one of these knobs. And of course, they correspond to banks as well. The first knob now becomes 9. I press bank C, it now becomes 17. And the last knob here, which is K8, now becomes 24. So remember, our control banks correspond with our knobs. And A is the beginning. So knob 1, bank A, in my control bank section. Now, I may want to change the parameter for this knob. I'll push down on my value knob. And here, I can change the parameters. We have our 4 fields as well, as you can see right here. And I can change these parameters. Now this also works for the pads. Let's say I did that. I like that. So okay. I can hit a pad. And now it says P4. That's the pad I just hit. Now, I can hit any of these pads. And these pads will tell you I'm hitting them. And there you go. Look at that. Corresponds to number right here. That's our pads. And so, pads have notes. Of course, these pads trigger notes. I can go right here, push in my value knob, and now I can change the parameter for each one of these pads. But in particular, the pad I just hit. Once I go to edit, that pad hit is going to be edited, which is pad 16. I press it again. That's pad. I know it's pad 16. I can change the note that that pad triggers. I can change the control channel. I can change the information right here in these 4 different fields for the pad. And that's setting 2. If I go back out again, this also works for the note repeat. I have note repeat now, but just press that button. And now, as you know, you can hold it down and it locks in. Light comes on. And here, I can change the toggle, momentary, or the gate or the swing factor. And here's the gate at 50, and the swing is at 50. See that? Yeah, it's 58 right there. Let's move to the swing. Yeah, it's 58. See that? The swing is 58, and the gate is 50. So I can change those parameters. Once I do, I can press enter, and it's good. And I can do my tap tempo as well. So the edit button allows me to edit any one of these buttons on my MPD32, where it's a fader, a pad, a knob, even time division. See, I press the time division button, and I have the ability to change the time division. I'll press enter, and I can toggle back. I can make the first button says quarter note. I can also make it this one. See that? As I turn this, the lights change here. And you see them go from 1 to S2 to S3, S4, S5. And that's how this works. We have the ability to edit the parameters. So right now, I'm going to hit the play button. And now, transport. So we can also edit the transport section. I can hit record. I can any one of these transports. So right here, I only have the ability to just do transport. I'll press enter, and we can change the control. That means these buttons, which are the back, forward, stop, play, and record buttons in my transport section. I can just change the MMC, which is the MIDI machine control, which you can see there. I can do MIDI, MMC, and MIDI, or just control change. See this? In this case, I'm doing MMC control. I can also do MIDI. Put a MIDI cable to this and send MIDI data out rather than using MMC. And we can change that. Once I change the one I want to use, I press edit and it's in there. Now we've done the transport, we did the knobs, the pads, we did the time division, the tap tempo, note repeat, the faders, and these little buttons, S1 buttons, and S2 through S8. They can be changed also, as you can see here. I can press these buttons and change them, see? So, I can select what information is going out from here to toggle back and forth. Once I do select it, that's it. I can go to my second button and changes there, 21 still, see that? So it's telling me the channel these things are being sent out on. There's 22, that's for 3. I'm going to S4 now. It's S4. That's 24. So I can change the parameters on my S buttons as well. The only thing we can't change are the bank buttons and the buttons we maneuver around with. Our preset buttons, our edit, the global, the full level, the 16 levels, the program change button, the left and right buttons. But everything else, we can change the parameter, including the foot switch. If you got a foot switch in, you can also change the parameters of that or an expressive pedal. Now we're here in Reasons, and we're in a Reasons preset. And what I want to do next is I want to talk about how to change and affect the pad parameters. Okay, now I'm going to press edit. Once I press edit, you'll see it says P1. That's pad 1. Now I've got my MPD32 plugged into my computer, of course, with USB cable, and I'm using reasons. I selected one module. And here I have note, and here we have program change. So we can do some changes to the note and the program change. Now we can change the data that's sent out. And I go here, I go to note, and here in note, as you can see, we can affect the MIDI channel number, the note itself, the momentary or toggle, and the CPR, and of course the PP. Let me put this over here. It's called the PPR. Now I'll press this in, and here in program change, I'll just press enter here. In program change, we can affect the program, the bank M, and the bank L, and of course my MIDI channel. Okay, now I want to talk more about note. So I press enter, and here we are on note. Let's enter again, actually. I'll put pad number 16. So I can affect that pad. Enter again, I can hit pad number 12. Enter, I can affect that pad. So let's need to just actually hit the pad you want to edit, press enter, and right there. Now the first program I can edit is the MIDI channel field. Now this field sets the MIDI port and the channel which the pad will use to transmit messages. Now you can assign pads to one or more MIDI ports like A or B, and to 1 to 16 MIDI channels in each port. So we can have 1 through 16 in A and 1 through 16 in B. And obviously I can turn the data wheel here, this value knob, and you can see it happen right there. Okay. Now, my next field here is for note. Now I can hit this note. Now this is triggering a module I've set up in Reasons. And that module is for our phaser keyboard sound. Now it's playing this note, which is 51, key 51. If I had keys on the keyboard, it'd be the 51st key. If I turn this up here, that's 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 53, and the original note I have there. So we can change the note that pad would transmit the data to. It's okay, it's going to say I'm going to play this note or that note. And that's how we can change that note. We can go up or down, obviously. Once you like it, of course, you can press enter and we're in. And that's our note field. Let's say, for example, I have a drum program. Now, before I play the keyboard, now I can also say I'm going to have the pads on my MPD32 trigger a drum. I'll bring up a drum module in my digital audio workstation, and I'm going to pick now I have some drum sounds. And now I'm in note. I can change a note. And as I hit the pad, I can change the note that I'm hitting. And that note in a drum module will be different. There'll be different drum sounds, obviously, at each note. Pad number 16, again, I've got that same note there. If I hit it harder, it's right there. Now, we're going to do the momentary and toggle field. Now, this is to do with the pressure, and it has to do more or less with the play mode. So what happens here is that here you can select whether the pad transmits note on note information, note on or note off information in the standard momentary way, like a keyboard. That means I can hit this, take my hand off, and it stops playing. That's a momentary. That means so it sounds momentarily until I stop playing, then it stops sounding. Okay. Then I also have toggle. And in toggle is where the first hit of the pad outputs a note, and the second hit of the pad turns it off. So that means when I hit the pad the first time, it stays on. Now watch this. I'll turn the data wheel here, value knob, and I'll hit the note, and it stays on. I gotta hit it again, and it turns off. Okay, on, off. Go back to momentary, hit it one time. Once I hit it, take my hand off, it stops playing. Momentary. The next parameter we have here is our pressure field. And here in the pressure field, we can set it to be channel pressure message, which is CPR, or PPR, which is polyphonic pressure message. Once you get the setting we like, you want to keep it, we press enter. And we can also do off also. So say I want to keep it off. This guy I want to keep it this. And I can save it by just pressing enter right there. See that? If I want to save it overall, I would just press preset and just save it right there in that preset, which in this case, which is reasons 2. The next parameter I can edit for my pad 16, is program change. So I'll press enter and we'll check this out. And as you can see here, the same as always, we have the MIDI channel. Of course, we can do A or B, 1 through 16A, 1 through 16B. Next, we have our program change field. Now in this field, you can set which program change number the pad will transmit when it's pressed. So if I have a particular number I want to transmit, I can say, well, we're going to transmit this number or that number. We can transmit this program change number, and that pad will transmit that program change. Now, program change could be in a keyboard. It could be turning a keyboard sound from a piano to an electric piano. That pad could actually trigger that change. Or in a drum program, it might trigger the disco drums as compared to the rap drums. So it depends on what program number it is in the DAW you're working with, your digital audio workstation, or your module, let's say an MPC. It will trigger change to change that program. The next field here is our bank M field. And the bank M field describes the most significant bit of information. I use the up and down arrows to select that field, and then I can use the value knob to select the most significant bit of information that's going to go out. Now this is just about bit information that's transmitted through our MIDI cable. And the next one is our bank L. And this is our least significant bit, okay? LSMB of information. Turn my data wheel here, and I can transfer this information. Now you can also configure the pads to send program change messages only without having the bank M or the bank L. While editing bank M and bank L fields on the pad, use value dial to set the bank M and bank L to off. So I would use these dials here and set them to M or set them to off if I wanted to. Hit my pad. Right. And here. And bring it back down here. So keeping it at 0 just keeps them pretty much at off, as you can see. That's beyond 0. Now this will cause the pad to transmit only the program change information, and that's what's really cool. So once I set the M bank to off there, bank M, bank L set to off at the same time as well. And then this setting will only transmit the program change. Press enter there, and I'm good. Well, next I want to do is I want to edit the knobs and faders. You can even do this for your expression pedal as well. Now, the knobs and faders in the pedal input in the MPD32 can be set to transmit control changes or aftertouch. So before we saw with the pads, it was note and program change. Well, with the faders and the knobs and the expression pedal, we can transmit the control change and the aftertouch. Now, we can also do the incrementals of each of these functions, of course, obviously. Now, the control change. The control change refers to, of course, the MIDI channel number. I'll press edit here, and we have control change and we have aftertouch. See that? Now, of course, I've got a fader. There's fader 1, here's fader 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'm going to do it on 1, obviously. Make it easier for me to reach out and grab. And next, we have aftertouch. So we can change these parameters. Of course, as I did before, all I got to do is press this little button in, and here we are. Let me describe program change first. Let's go back to push it in again. And here's control change. Now, control change refers to the use of the MIDI continuous control data. Now, the continuous control data, known as the CC, is just the MIDI message that's being sent and transmitted in a range of values from 0 to 127. Okay? And so, right here, we have that program change. And the control is right here, as you can see. Now next, the aftertouch. Aftertouch refers to the MIDI data sent when pressure is applied to that particular pad, we'll say, but this term is a knob. And, or to the pad, we'll say, and this fader will control that aftertouch. So, once that pad has been struck, while it's being held down, aftertouch is often used to control vibrato, like, or volume, or other parameters. So, that's what that knob, this fader will control. The aftertouch, that information that's transmitted. Okay, so now I'm going to do the control change. I'll press enter, his control change. Move my cursor over, I can change this, which is my MIDI channel. Of course, that's 1A or 16A all the way up to B, 16B, as always. Now my next field. In this field, you can switch, or you can actually set which MIDI channel, control channel that is, the knob or the fader will transmit when it's used. So I can select, it's going to be transmitting 12. Okay, that means that this fader 1 will transmit on 12. Its control is 12. Okay, so whatever's setting out, it's going to send out on that particular channel. That's the control change. You got me? Okay, good. Now I can select any one of my channels. I can go from 0 there, as you can see there, all the way to 127. See that? So we can send 0 to 127, and before it was at 21. There you go. Right at 12, excuse me. Okay, there we go, right there. It'll transmit out of A, but on channel 12. That's 12. That's the 12. So it's between 1 and 27 different MIDI channels. Not MIDI channels, but these are the control channels right there. Now next we have our minimum maximum. Now here, this would be our minimum. Now this field is used to specify the minimum value that the knob or fader can output. It's the minimum. So between this range and that range. So sometimes you might not want the full 127 range, we'll say, of control that a fader automatically defaults to. So often reducing the value range of the fader might give you more precise control over the parameter it's sort of controlling, that particular value that you're trying to control there. So sometimes I have a minimum and there's a maximum. I may say, I only want to be in a certain range here. I don't want to have this full range. I want to have this range, let's say I bring this up somewhat more, between 28 and 98. So turn that fader will just give me that one short range. That way I don't want to have the full maximum of whatever control that fader is controlling through this control number right here, which is 12. All right, next I want to go over aftertouch. So here we are, fader 1, just move fader 1. We did control change, now we're doing aftertouch. I'll push in the value knob, and here are my aftertouch parameters. Now, for some applications, you might wish to use, let's say, a fader or the knob for aftertouch control change. You know, this is pretty good when you're using this fader knob to transmit aftertouch information for, let's say, a vibrato or tremolo for a keyboard. And so these parameters I'm going to edit right here will help us do that. Now, of course, our first parameter field here is the MIDI channel field. As we say before, as we keep saying each time, you can see this is the same thing that happens so much in every parameter we can edit. And we have this MIDI channel field because we need to send this to a particular MIDI channel, MIDI port, which is A or B, 1 through 16, neither A or B. Okay, so next, we have the aftertouch. Now here we have our minimum and maximum range. So you can see here we go to A, but then we go to the cursor, it goes past the AFT right here. And we're going to the range. So we have our minimum range that we can use our maximum. So if you got a tremolo or vibrato, you may not want to have it go so far up and so far down. So you may want to just go to a specific range. But you only want to go but just so far between here and there, so that way when you do move that fader and you want to affect that vibrato setting or that tremolo setting for that keyboard, it will only go within that range. So maybe hold that keyboard down, aftertouch will let vibrato or tremolo only within this range in the aftertouch. That's how we set our minimum and maximum for it. Now once we get the one we like and we think it's proper for us, well, we go on from there and we just press enter. And that's how we affect the aftertouch for a fader or a knob or even your expression pedal. Now so far we've been working with the fader. Now what I can do here also is I'm going to turn the K1 knob, and the K1 knob has one other parameter that we can edit, which is our increment and decrement parameters. Okay, so of course we have, as you can see here, the control change, then the aftertouch. Well, the next parameter here is the INC/DEC, increment and decrement. Now the knobs, or the endless knobs, we know they're continuous, so sort of endless. You can turn these knobs on the MPD32 may also be used in an increment and decrement known as an NRPN function. Now this allows you to use a knob in increment and decrement through the parameters, and this has to only work and can only work actually when that particular function is allowable on the particular software you're using. And once it is, let's say that software is okay, well, you can use the NRPN function. Well, then we can set that function for the knob. And this function's right here, as you can see. Now, of course, our first field sets our MIDI channel we're going to transmit on. We can do from 1A to 16B for our control change channel. And the next parameter that we have here is our bank M, which of course is our most significant bit of information that flows through our MIDI cable. And of course, the next one is the least significant bit of information that flows through for a value. And this function works great when you have a application like Reasons and allows you to set these knobs for specific data. That way, by turning that knob, it controls that data. Okay, now I want to edit the buttons. So I was here in K1, which is knob 1. I'm going to press the S1 button, and you see there it says set S1. Now I have S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, S6, 7, and 8. Now I can press edit, of course, right here, and you can see we can affect several changes. The control change and the program change with these S buttons. So I'm going to go over control change parameters first. Now, I'm going to press enter. And here we have it again. We have our MIDI channel field, which sets the MIDI port and channel, which the buttons will use to transmit the messages. As you know, from port A or B, channels 1 through 16. Then we have our control change. And this control change right here is a number. See that number right there? Now in this field, I can set which control change number the button will transmit. So that control, let's say I've got a keyboard, and it's in reasons. And the control change number for that keyboard is 21. So I will use that switch for a control change number. And what that'll allow me to do is to transmit over that MIDI channel to that control change in that keyboard. I can select any number I want to select here, of course, obviously. It's always, as you know, from 0 to 127, but all depends on what that control change is going to do. So you're going to be aware of that. Make sure you are aware of that. You know what you're going to do. Now next we have, it's either toggle or momentary, like before. So maybe toggle, which means we can hold it, hit it one time, it'll play, tap it again, it'll not play, not meaning play, but that control change will last. Or we can go to momentary, where whatever that parameter, that 21 is at for that keyboard, it will only happen once the player plays that particular instrument, and then it'll stop. So this is toggle and momentary for this setting. Once you get the one you want to use, we're right back here in control change. Next we have program change. Now the buttons can also be assigned to transmit program change messages when pressed. So I'll push that button down. And as always, we have our first setting right there. And this first setting is the MIDI channel field. Of course, port A and B, channels 1 through 16A, 1 through 16 in B. Now next here we have, which you have blinking right here, where the 00 is, my program change field. And here I can select the program change number that this button will transmit when this button is pressed. So I can press this particular button and say, well, I press that button, now that program change information will continue to go out and be transmitted from that particular MIDI channel. And of course, here we have our most significant bit and our least significant bit as well. Now here they're off right now. I need to just turn one of them on, and then we have the ability to turn either one of them up or down, depending on how much bit information we plan to transmit, the least and the most bit. Okay, once I've got that done, I can press enter here. It's good. And I might want to do note repeat. So I'm going to press the note repeat button. And now I have the ability to edit my note repeat. And you can see it right there. We have gate and swing, and we have toggle and momentary. Now this feature allows us to edit the note repeat and enable it so you can repeatedly trigger a sound by simply holding down that pad. And the sound will be re-triggered over and over at a specific rate. Now that means that the time division sets up. my time division could be quarter notes or 16th notes. Well, that's how many times it'll repeat. It'll repeat according to how many 16th notes I've got set up in my tempo. So I could have a tempo of 120, and I could have a time division of 16th notes. Well, that repeated note or repeated drum sound, whatever that pad is triggering, will repeat over and over according to that time division and the tempo. So once we're set up here, we've got it set up, and we want to continue from here, I'll just press enter. It says toggle and momentary, and here we have just two different states. We have the toggle and we have the momentary. So toggle means, of course, that it's going to be locked in there with toggle, and we have momentary, where momentary is like just for that moment. Hit it and let your hand go, that's it. Now, I'll leave it there at momentary. Well, I hit my hand, let go, and toggle means I'll just hold it down, it'll continue to play. So let's go back to here. I want to keep that. And I want to go to gate and swing. Now the gate parameter describes the duration of the repeated note. So that means how long that note's going to be sustained for, how long that note's sustained for. And the swing parameter describes the swing offset of the even notes in the repeated sequence. Okay? Now I'll press enter right here, and you can see we have a gate of 50 and a swing of 58. And these are default settings for our MPD32. So be aware of that as well. So you can always, change your gate, change your swing, but go back to your default to compare the differences in your note repeat. Now, one thing I want to talk about also is this gate. Now, this gate thing really works well if the sound we're triggering has a long decay. So for the gate effect to be perceived and heard properly, the sounds that I'm picking, that you pick, have got to have some sort of long decay to it, like a long 808 drum or something. And then when you turn this gate up or down, you will check out and see the differences between having a smaller or a larger number set for our gate. Now, if we were to add some swing to our original sequence, you will end up with a sequence that'll be a little bit ahead at certain notes. On the even notes, be a little bit ahead. So be aware of that. That means some notes will be displaced from where they would normally be at in the quantized function. They'll be a little ahead. So it gives a perception of almost swinging it, but you got to be careful in using swing. I can also edit the time division. So let me press my time division button here. Go back to preset, press time division, press edit. Now time division, you see it right there, and we have set time division 1. It's only one time division, so that's all we can set as one thing. And we have here the parameters for time division are right here. We have division, and that's it. See that? That's all we have. Now how this works. The time division feature works in conjunction with note repeat. So when note repeat is enabled and a pad is held down on the MPD32, it will output the notes at the rate equivalent to the time division setting. Now to change the time division setting, we just go here, we press time division, and we can select a new rate by pressing the corresponding button, whether it's the first S1 button for the quarter note or the last N1 button for 30-second note triplet. Once we're in, we have a default setting, which is the quarter note. And we can go up to a default setting of 30-second. I prefer to keep it at quarter. That's the best way to go. And we can do momentary or toggle here. Momentary or toggle, switch back and forth. As we showed you earlier how we can do that with our note repeat. Now, each preset can have a default time division setting, which is set every time the preset is loaded. So it's important to realize that once I press this button here, this time division button, and the preset's loaded, of course, my default setting is this quarter note. Now, if I go to here and say, and set it to quarter triplet, that means once I turn it on, my default setting, it starts off at quarter note triplet. So always, I prefer, and I think you should do too, is keep it to the quarter note. There's no need to change that unless you're doing some sort of, I don't know, maybe just using triplets for that particular setting, and you want to use this triplets everywhere you go in this song you're making, or probably the type of music you're making. So be aware of it, but start off with the chord note. I sort of leave this setting the way it is because I can always change these settings later on if I have to. Then we can edit our transport control, which of course are transport buttons. Our forward, our back, our stop, play, and record buttons. Now in the MPD32, we can configure the send transport control information in a variety of ways. We can do it MMC, which is the MIDI machine control. We can do MIDI machine control / MIDI. That means they're both at the same time. Or just MIDI or control. Now some applications like Reasons, like Go Live, like Cubase, and devices like the MPC 1000 or 5000 or MV. These programs and these devices have dedicated MMC control functions. And these will only respond to MMC messages. So generally I have to use MMC most of the time, because some of them won't take MIDI, some will. So the MMC, almost every single device will be controlled through MMC. While others may not have MCC functions or MMC functions, you can use the MIDI via the MIDI systems or suspect systems. That means I can use MIDI, and it would say, okay, I'll talk to this machine through MIDI. Now, what you need to do is make sure that you know what your particular software or your hardware is using for a control change to happen between that and your MPD32. So obviously you need to read that manual and understand it totally. Now to get here for my transport edit, I'll just press any button here, as you can see there, and I got my MMC back, my forward, my stop, my play. And so I got a little thing going on here, which is controlling reasons. Stop, and I can run it back to the top again. So this is controlling the Reasons software and the song inside of Reasons. I'm in the Reasons, I'm in the preset. I'll press the pad button here. It says MMC back. I'll go to edit. And now you see it says set transport, set trans TRNS, and there it says transport. And we can have the transport. That's all we can actually set there, right? So I'll push the button in, and you can see here. This is pretty simple. We have here, we've got MMC, MIDI machine control, MIDI. We're just going to use MIDI to send out these control changes from the transport. That means it'll tell it to stop and play and record and stop and fast forward and back rewind. We can use both MMC and MIDI. And we have control change. We can use control, just direct control. The most popular is MMC, which is almost in everything these days. So MMC is the most popular thing I would use all the time when sending control changes out. Tap tempo button. So I'm going to hit the tap tempo button one time. I'm going to go ahead and edit. And now we see set tap tempo. Now, every time the preset is loaded, the BPM setting will be loaded automatically. So that means here, all we have is tap tempo. I can press this down. This setting right here, you see here, 118 is the default setting. So whenever I start doing something with my machine, it'll be 118. I can go to here, do that, and that'll be my new setting. So this will be the automatic tempo that will happen. Now to edit the default tempo, obviously, just press enter or edit right there. And then now you just select the tempo as I just did. And we'll see that come up. Let me press enter to keep it. Right? That's pretty simple. So page 1 is the tempo, and page 2 is the BPM, as you can see that, right? There's no change of tempo. All we're going to do is change the BPM right here. So we have 2 pages for our tap tempo change. That's pretty simple, and that's how it works. The global commands. These are commands that control the overall functions on several things on our MPD32. I'll press global, And here, our first one here is called Kill MIDI. Now, sometimes you're playing an instrument and it keeps ringing, and you don't know why it's ringing. Well, this button here will help you to kill MIDI. It'll stop all notes off. And so Kill MIDI allows you to send either an all notes off message on each MIDI channel or to reset all the controllers. So it does both. So you see here, I'll turn the knob here. We have this reset controllers, or we have kill the notes. Once you press the button down, nothing else to do. So that means once we go here, we press that button, we press this enter, we kill the notes. We press there, we stop all the controllers. That way, in case something happens, you're doing a session, and all these notes are playing at once, you don't know what's going on, or they're sustaining too long, you can press it here, and it'll cut all notes. Here, it'll turn off all the controllers. And this resets everything. So it goes right back, it stops all the information from going out. And it's used to return the values, such as aftertouch and their default controls, back to the default settings. MIDI common channel. I'm using my left and right arrows, cursors. And here we're on common channel. Now the common channel, that means the offset, that you can assign the MIDI common channel to specific MIDI channel. Let's say, in this case, it's 1A. Any and all pads, buttons, knobs, faders assigned to this main common channel, the CC. This is the MIDI common channel. We'll transmit MIDI information via this channel. And I can just go here to change it, my data knob, and this will be my common channel. Next we have our LCD display. Now here you'll see it, of course, if you're looking at it. I turn this knob, turn the display, turn it this way. 50 is the actual parameter it's set to. And it fades out somewhat, right? And I'll keep it there at 50. Next, we have pad sensitivity. Now, pad sensitivity allows you to adjust how sensitive the pads will be when they're touched. Now, to adjust the settings, you just need to turn it on. Now, if the pad sensitivity number is set too low a number, it's harder to get the high velocity level. Even if you hit the pad real hard, you won't get that level. Okay? And if the pad sensitivity number is set too high, it becomes too easy to hit the high. You know, you can hit it really soft, it still hits really loud. I got a sound here right now. I'm hitting it. I gotta hit it real hard to make it sound out. Meanwhile, I get to here, and you can hit the pad. So be aware of that. Test it, find out, see what you like, see which feel gives you the best feel when you're striking that pad, so you know, hey, I like the way that sounds like that. Now here we have next, this is our pad curve. This is our pad velocity curve. Now, pad velocity curve describes how the pad here on an MPD32 are outputting MIDI velocities. Now, this is based on certain ratios, let's say of the input and the output of the velocity, that characterizes the particular curve. So you'll see more of this in your manual, but I will explain it. So if you find it difficult to achieve a comfortable velocity range for your playing style, whether you're playing soft or hard, you may be using two fingers at once, hitting a certain sound or something. In fact, let me get a drum sound up here in my software. So we're hitting that pad. It depends on your style of hitting that pad. And if you find it difficult to achieve a comfortable velocity that you feels good, then we could change the different settings. And you just go right here, you go to A, hit your pad, and hit the style you hit it at, so that when you are hitting those velocities and you want to have these velocities be at the velocities you feel are good for you, that means that when you're hitting the pad, you're not going to make it all full level. You want to have these different levels each time you hit the pad. What this velocity curve does, it helps you balance that out. So when you are striking the pad, you get to feel it's best for you. My deal with you is to experiment, but you got to make sure you know what you're doing. Here is our velocity pad level, and this is the velocity pad. You can see here, which is the velocities right here, and then we have the pad strengths right here. And it's A, B, C, or D. And that's how that works. So, mainly I keep it at A, because I like a good stiff pad with strong levels. Our pad threshold. Now the pad threshold is the minimum force required to activate the pad. Now, if you experience this ghost effect sometimes, you're triggering a pad and due to some sort of vibration or whatever, you may hit it and all of a sudden it hits again. We don't want that. So, what we want to have is that when we hit that pad, that it actually triggers at that threshold level. So on the other hand, if you find it difficult to trigger sounds when playing the pad lightly, so you press it real softly, and doesn't trigger a sound that well, you may wish to set the value to be a little lower number. So again, this is all based on your feel. You must test it out and see what pad threshold level works best for you. Now here, the default here on my machine is 3. MIDI clock. Now, MIDI clock is used to synchronize devices together. So I can synchronize this machine with my, let's say, Pro Tools System Pro, but reasons. So for example, I go press play, and I can play the song from the beginning. And press stop. So I'm in sync, but I'm using it through MIDI clock. What happens is MMC is sending MIDI clock data out. So, in addition to MIDI clock, it's used to synchronize note repeat as well. So the MPD can be a master or slave for MIDI clock purposes. Now this value is internal. That means internal means here that this machine is a controller. It's the master for internal. And then external means that it's being controlled by an outside source. So if a MIDI cable plugged up in here or a USB cable plugged in, and I press play on the software, well, that'll have this machine will be automatically in sync with whatever's happening. That way my note repeat will be perfectly in sync with the machine. Tap, tempo, average. Now this means that if I tap the tempo, tap, 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 2 or 3 times, and I tap it, and I tap it several times, that it's going to take an average. It's going to say, well, he tapped it 3 times, and of those 3 taps, what was the average speed of those taps? It may be 120 BPM, maybe 80 BPM, meaning beats per minute. So this is a great way for us to make sure that when we tap that pad, we don't have to tap it like over and over 18 times to get an average. You want to tap it 2 or 3 times. I prefer 3 taps. Those 3 taps I put down should be good. 2 taps are a little too quick for me. 1 tap, of course, not at all. So the difference is we have 2, 3, or 4. I stick with 3, the mid-ground. A save setup. This means I can save what I just did. I changed some parameters, my tap tempo, I could have changed my threshold for the pads. I could save this entire setup. That means I'm going to save whatever global parameters I did set here. So to do that, I'll scroll there, I can press enter, and I save my setup. And it's saved right there. See, it's saved. Once it's saved, it goes back to the first setting, which is kill MIDI. That's my save setup. Now the next thing we have here is our system exclusive transfer. Okay, this is known as a Sussex TX, as you can see. Now, this allows you to transfer your preset data from the MPD32 via the system Sussex, right through your MIDI cable. And this data includes the control numbers, the MIDI channel numbers, and the various other parameters that we've already set up in the machine. So we can transfer someplace else and reload them back in. This is kind of cool. So while in the global mode, we press, of course, this for this value here. We can turn our value and set our preset. We've got 1, see? So we have up to 30 presets. So we can transfer the preset information. Right now, we're in preset 2, obviously, right? Now, you can also load preset data into the MPD32 from an external source by playing the Sussex file into the MPD32. So we can actually save these onto a different machine that takes in Sussex information. We'll transfer to there, and we can transfer it back in. This can be done with a variety of Sussex applications, many of which are widely and freely available on the internet. So you get these applications you can get, and you could transfer them right onto a computer, let's say, and you can have a whole bunch of presets. And when you want to bring them back in, you just transfer them back in. You got to make sure the device is connected to your MPD32, either via USB or MIDI, depending on whether that machine. It could be an application on a computer. It could be within my MPC 1000, which might save the Sussex transfer data. Then I can send it right back to the MIDI cable from the MPC or my MV8800. Make sure that you are in the preset mode when you do this. You press play, or actually you play the Sussex file on the external device, whether it's a computer or my MPC or my MV or whatever machine I've stored it to, and then it'll play right back in. Now you got, please note this, that when transferring such information into the MPD32, the data will override the data already in the machine, the original preset. So that means when it comes in, it's going to put a new stuff in. So for example, if you transfer preset 5 to your Sussex editor and then send it back to the MPD32, the data will override the preset. That means if I transfer new data in now, the new data that comes in will override the data that's already there. It'll get rid of it, erase it totally. Program change button. Now press that button. Now the program change often refers to as a patch, which means a sound or a particular setup of sounds. And it's a MIDI message used to send data to the device to cause them to change this particular sound or change a new program. This allows you to tell a hardware or software device which sound to play. For example, I may use this on my MPD32 to control an acoustic drum patch on my digital audio workstation. Using program command changes, it allows me easily to switch to the percussion patch. I'm going to go from percussion to an acoustic drum patch. Well, by implementing the program change, I will change that. Now, there are two different types of program change messages that the MPD32 sends out. Now, you see here we have program change, and we have program and bank. So, this event, the program change, transmits the regular program change message 0 to 23, which allows you to switch amongst 128 different program banks. Now, the other one right here, which we have, which is the program bank, this event transmits the program messages from 0 to 127 along with the bank, or which is of course the least bit and the most bit. So the L bank and the M bank, or the bank M, bank L. This is cool because it helps you transmit the most amount or the least amount of data, which allows you to access over 100, or actually 16,332 different banks. That's 16,384 different banks. Be aware of that. Allows you to transmit that much, to access up to that much in bank program data. You can use program bank if your DAW, digital audio workstation, or your external device supports LSB and MSB. Now I'm gonna go back here to program change, and I'll press enter. And here we can see it's pretty simple. Our first field here is our MIDI change field. So we're going to send it out to either bank, or excuse me, port A or port B, and that's 1 through 16 in A and 1 through 16 in B. And then we have our program. We can go from 00, which can be a program, up to 127. 128 different programs we can select. So I can move the cursor here, of course change my dial, and we can get there and we can get back down to 0. We know it's going to go to 127 as we've seen before. That's the most, of course, you can actually do with that. So we can press enter if we like it, and we're good to go. Then I can go to program bank. Now here, a little bit more. We have the bank M and the bank L. As you already know, this is the bank M for the most significant bit, and the bank L is for the least significant bit. So, but you also notice here too that before we can turn this off, now here you can't, because it has to be transmitted. If this device using, or the DAW, the digital audio workstation, can take this information, it can be transmitted to it, obviously. So we're going to make sure that we don't have it set to 0 too much. So you can't go to off. We're going to make sure we set the right amount here. And we have the right amount we want to set it for. Sometimes you may mess up. You know, we all do. We're all human, right? So the problem could be you made a mistake and you messed up all the parameters. You want to go back to your factory default. That's how you do it. We'll press the right cursor button. It's once. We get the save to. We get the preset name. And then you'll notice here that I'm keep going down to each letter here. And my next letter, I go to the end each time, and now it says factory. And now I can go to factory defaults. And it says factory. Now, I can just press enter, and it'll give me back the factory default. And restore it back to the normal. I can press this down now. And now, it's going to give me the normal, and right back here. See right there? Went right back to the beginning there. And my factory settings are back, and again, I can load this in again. And any changes I made already are gone. And now I have the default settings that the factory had. When it came from the factory, these are default settings for my Reason software, the default settings for Light Live, or Live Light, Cubase, Sonar, and everything else here. The next thing I want to show you here is the full level button. Now, I can hit a pad. It'll play loud, hit it harder, and softer. I can turn up a little bit more here. And that's really loud. So the harder I hit the pad, the more velocity I get a louder sound. If I do full level, each time it's loud. Each time it's loud. I turn it full level off. It's a little low. I gotta hit it hard to get that full sound. And I want to use full level primarily, mostly when I'm using drums, particularly using drums and dance tunes. I'm gonna use full level most of the time, or just a little bit right below full level for the verses and the chorus. I'll make sure the drums are full level, giving that feeling like we know we're getting more energized. So that's full level. So next I'm going to press the 16 levels button right here. And now, the last drum sound I hit appears on all the pads. I'm going to pan a little bit more here, and we'll show you more of it. So here at 16 levels, this is the softest sound. This is the loudest one. So, that's 16 levels. Now, I'll hit that. They all sound the same pretty much, right? That's because that sound is just one level. So you got to be aware of it. You may hit a sound and you want it to be 16 levels, but that sound may have no levels to it. Maybe just one sample, and there's no actual way to provide dynamics to it through MIDI. And it's important to realize that with some sounds you may have in your system set that way. So be sure to understand that as well also. So that's 16 levels. Now before I showed you full level, before, that's the sound. I go here. It's much louder at full level, without full level rather. With full level it's louder, without it, it isn't. And that's important to realize that too. And that's how you use full level and 16 level on our MPD32. So now I'm going to communicate with my Reason software. I've set up the MIDI here. I can go to edit, I go to my transport, I'm hitting my stop button, and here it says transport. I can go here and edit transport, and I set it to MIDI. As you can see, I can press the back, forward, and here's the play button, which activates that. And the record button, it all says MIDI. That's good for me. And once that does, that's set that way, it's perfect. Now, I also have my faders right here. And here, my faders, I can pretty much move this fader up and down here. And on my mixer in Reasons, we'll see that this is controlling the fader in the mixer in Reasons. When I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 there, I control the first 8 faders in Reasons. Here I move the faders. You can see the faders move. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Let's pull 6 back down. So I can control these faders. Now remember, there are control numbers. These control numbers correspond to control numbers for reasons. And that's why I have the preset. The preset has all these control numbers that correspond to the certain devices within reasons. For example, this is the mixer. And so these faders correspond to the mixer. Now if I go to bank, control bank B, now I have the rest of the faders. See this? I can control those as well. I'm going to show you something now with aftertouch. Now here we got fader 15, right? So I'm going to fader 1 actually. I'm going to go to A, bank A. Here's fader 1. Now here's my control change. I'm going to go here to aftertouch, press aftertouch. Now here in aftertouch, I'm going to set this up to say be 39 and make this come down to about 100. Now, I'll enter that and we'll see how that works with the fader. So now, I'm going to set my aftertouch for specific parameters. And now, I'll press enter. What happens is that it won't move. But my other ones will move. And notice here too, that see how that one go over to the end. See, it comes here and stops. So, you got to realize that when you are setting your parameters, be careful. Some won't move. So you got to know what the aftertouch will do to a fader, or what it'll do to a knob, or to a switch, if you assign it to that particular switch, fader, or knob. So that means those control numbers that we saw earlier, which are called the channel control numbers, specifically interact with specific buttons or knobs or faders within the devices, or even here in your mixer. So be careful of that. So what I'll do here right now, since we can see here that I can move this one, let's go all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. What I'll do is I can go back to fader 2. I'll look at my fader 2 changes. I'll go to control change. I'll press enter. And I'll bring this down, I'll press enter down, and I'll bring it down. It goes all the way down. So what happens in control change, where I actually go in and I can edit some of the parameters there. I'll go higher now. I'll make it so it won't come down but so far. See? It's only going to come down but so far. And that's what's happening in my control change. Let me show you that. Now, remember, this first one wouldn't move when I had the aftertouch set to specific parameters. Okay, now I'm going to show you that. Right here, I'm going to go to fader 2, and I'm going to press enter, and you see I had it at 48. So the higher I made that number, that fader would not go down to 0, which is the very bottom to the top. So if I go to here and bring this down and move the fader again, it will only go but so high. So remember that. For your control changes, observe how by changing some of these parameters, how it affects that fader, that knob or switch, or whatever you're using to control that specific device in the software or in your hardware device. Another thing, I'm controlling reasons. I'll go to my global command, MIDI click. I'm going to internal control, not external. I want the MPD32 to control it. So make sure I'm there always, okay? So I go back here to my preset, and I can hit a pad. That says MMC control. See this? That's MMC control. That's right there for it. Now, what I could do by pressing play, I might be able to control that specific device. What I'll do next is I can go back in here and go to edit, hit my device button, and here and turn this to MIDI. Then press edit. Then everything here is going to control it. Now I'm in MIDI. I'm using MIDI to control the reason session. Now, let's pan out here a little bit more, and we'll look down a little more on this machine, get a better view for you. And here I have my tap tempo. Now, and I can press this press stop. I'm not controlling the reasons of that. Now go back here. And so we can control the Reason software via MIDI. So I can use MMC or MIDI. Here I'm using MIDI right now to control the Reason software, so I can have the MPD32 send tempo changes to it. So this is my computer right now. I'm going to press play. Change the tempo, make it slower. And you can see here, this line here is moving. I'll press stop. I've stopped the program, so I can control it. Now I'm going to pull another song. I have a song right here next to it. It's already done. You'll see this in action here. It's another song right there. And I'll go back to the top. Now I press play. So a little like rap feel right there from one of the demos that comes with Reasons. And I can change the tempo. And now I'll play it again. Now I'll press the back button to go right back to start. I'm tapping it while it's playing too, so I can change the tempo anytime I want to change the tempo, which is kind of cool. You can have the song continue to play, maybe pick a tempo you feel is going to be better, tap that tempo out, and you can adjust to the tempo. Right here I have this NN19 selected here in Reasons, and I'm going to hit a pad, my first pad. These pads are playing, all these pads are playing the notes, as you can obviously see. But I can also turn the fader. If I move a fader, you'll see this filter move here. So I can use the MPD sort of like a control to control this device. All I do is just select the device, and then once I do, I have the ability to change some parameters here. I can pick another fader. This is fader 3, here's fader 4. And you'll notice certain things are changing here. You notice that we are changing some parameters here throughout the system. That's something to point to. Now here you'll notice we're changing here and here. You'll see the fader move there. That's fader number 5. So when you're on Reasons and you're using your MPD32 or 2416, check out, see which faders actually make changes within that device's software. Because each one of these things are separate. This is the NN19. You may be using the Thor or something else, some other device, or redrum. And if you are using it, just check out, see which faders do what, and which ones you can actually assign. I recently got my iPad, and I went online looking for a PDF file, and Reasons actually makes a file here that you can look up and see, and it's called the Reasons Propeller Head Control Surface Details. And here in the details, you'll see here that we can use the MPD right there in AKAI. Now when you got your preset for Reasons set up, you can automatically record into Reasons with the MPD32. Here's how it works. I'll just press the record button. What I've selected here in my software also is I made sure, as you can probably see right there, pull it down a little bit so you can see a little better, that I have quantize going on here. I have my pre-count off on. Click is on. I'm just going to press record, this button here, but on my MPD32. And make sure that I'm back at the top. I'll just press it. It'll start to record after the first 4 clicks. I'm going to use redrum. So, as you can see there, we recorded something right there. Let me pull this down so you can see it's recorded right there. That's with my redrum. And I can play it back. I'm going to use the back button on my MPD32 and press play. And this works on any track. I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to use this track here. And I'm going to use obviously this little synth sound. Use my back button here, press record. Now rewind back again and I'll press play. So you can go right ahead, select the track, select what you want to, any module that you have selected already, and then record directly from your MPD32 into your Reason software.